Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here and taking the time to meet with us today. I'm R.J. Simpson. I'm the Premier of the Northwest Territories. I'm joined by Carolyn Wawzonek, Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance and Minister of Infrastructure, and by Grand Chief Lafferty of the Tlichong Government, Chairperson of the Sahtu Secretariat Inc, Charles McNeely, and Danny Gaudet Government Equatide, Danny Gaudet. This week, a significant delegation from the Northwest Territories, including cabinet ministers and Indigenous government leaders, have come to Ottawa with a clear and united message. The Northwest Territories stands at the crossroads of Canada's strategic future, and with the right public policy decisions, we are poised to make substantial contributions to Canada's prosperity and national security. This week's meetings with federal decision makers are focused on housing, infrastructure, climate adaptation, and critical minerals, as well as collaboration to fulfill treaties, address addictions, and improve public safety. By focusing on these priorities, the NWT will not only uplift its own residents, but also provide the federal government with strategic assets necessary for national security and economic stability. At the core of all this is a strong commitment to collaborative governance. The NWT has the most complex system of Indigenous and public governance in Canada, with Dene, Inuit, and Métis governments, some still in the process of finalizing self-government agreements, and a mixture of treaty land entitlements and community and regionally based self-governments, all alongside a consensus-based public territorial government. This requires true collaboration as we work to address challenges and take advantages of opportunities in the territory, demonstrating to Canada and the world what reconciliation can look like. In the North, reconciliation is not a platitude. It's a reality that guides our every policy decision. The North is Canada's next horizon. Through strategic investments in the NWT, the federal government can unlock the North's enormous potential for the benefit of all Canadians. It's time to seize this moment, because the future of the North is the future of Canada. Thank you. I would like to introduce Tlichong Grand Chief Jackson Lafferty.
Merci, Premier. I'm truly honored to be here as Grand Chief of Tlichong Government and Chair of the NWT Leaders of Council leadership to advance NWT priorities in Ottawa. We come as many governments to seek support and also solutions for the significant economic and social challenges that affect the daily lives of our people and our communities throughout the North. Basic needs such as roads, affordable housing, and health care remains inadequate across the Northwest Territories. The high cost of living and climate change impacts are very real for our communities, for our families, their ability to make ends meet. NWT Council leaders is not just a forum for discussions. It is a catalyst for action. We have come together to Ottawa to ask Canada to invest in our future, to have a lot to offer as a Canadian economy. Each region has its own ideas to grow our economy. In our region, we can offer renewable energy, connectivity through projects such as Naili hydro projects, Gameti, and Wakwiti corridors, all-weather roads. We have mineral resource potential and can work with Canada, Ottawa, to increase private investment. The Northwest Territories is on the cusp of finalizing the NWT PAP, Our Land for the Future Agreement, which will support Indigenous governments to lead stewardships and also conservation efforts and grow economic prosperity opportunities while making a significant contributions to Canada biodiversity goals. Indigenous governments are implementing our own jurisdictions, in our jurisdiction, taking over areas such as education, child and family services, to ensure our people have access to services that are rooted to our own language, culture, and our way of life. There are so many opportunities in the North. In the Northwest Territories, and having these exciting projects come to life as economic reconciliation, as Premier indicated, in actions. By working together, as it shows here, all of us together from the North leadership, we can leverage our collective strength and to create solutions that benefit our communities, the North, for a sustainable future. At this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Ekwatide Danny Gaudet. Merci.
Hi, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today and hear about our priorities that we all share as leaders for the Northwest Territories. I want to start by recognizing my fellow Indigenous government leaders of the Northwest Territories, as well as the Premier and his cabinet, and the willingness of the federal cabinet minister to meet with us this week. We have significant infrastructure gaps in the Northwest Territories that is driving the cost of living up. My community is a fly-in community. It's called Delaney on Great Bear Lake, Northwest Territories. And for most of the time, we only have access to a winter road that's open for 8 to 10 weeks a year. The Mackenzie River, which flows by Great Bear Lake, the water levels are so low that we've lost all our barging services to the Sahtu. And that is driving the cost of living through the roof in the Northwest Territories. I use an example today that the imperial fuel prices have gone up to about $5.50 a liter of fuel. And to put that in perspective, a house holds about 250 gallons, 1,000 liters. And if we fill that up, it's well over $5,000. And it lasts only maybe a month and a half in the cold winters. So the cost of living has gone through the roof. And we need the collective leadership to work together to figure out solutions for the Sahtu, and not only for the Sahtu, but for all the other communities in the Northwest Territories. The collaboration between cabinet ministers and the Indigenous communities is very important. We've operated this way for thousands of years on how we work together as Indigenous people. Through this process, we're hoping to bring that back, and we've been very grateful to be able to meet with cabinet ministers. We've been talking about the infrastructure on the Mackenzie Highway. We've been talking about housing. We've been talking about all the other issues that Premier R.J. have mentioned already. The Indigenous community makes up 50% of the population in the Northwest Territories. And, we have to work with our existing governments, and we have to communicate on common issues and interests. We have a very important role in making sure that we strengthen not only the Northwest Territories, but we strengthen Canada. We have that ability through working on minerals, rare minerals. We talk about rare minerals. We've done that in other areas, but we need to build a strategy and that works for all of us in the North. We need to close the gaps between the Northerners and the Southern communities and the Southern cities. Great Bear Lake is unique to the environment in Canada. It's the largest freshwater lake in Canadian borders, and we're working very closely with the government of Northwest Territories and the federal government on developing a conservation area that meets Canada's targets to do 30-30. And Great Bear Lake itself is 33,000 square kilometers. The conservation area for Great Bear Lake is 66,000 square kilometers. We have significant critical minerals in our backyard, so we need to figure out a balance between conservation and also the development of these resources. It's hard to do when you do it alone. It's important that we do it together with other Indigenous groups and other governments. Canada has the ability to thrive in the world economy, and we can help that. We could do that through all our groups that are working on all the improvements we're trying to make to our communities, because we're trying to simply move from social dependency to independence. But in order to do that, we have to work hard towards improving housing and our health care and implement our modern treaties and self-government agreements. We need to make this shift, and it's an important shift for us to make. To achieve these outcomes, my community works with the federal government and the government of Northwest Territories. However, I recognize that we are connected to the NWT as a whole and to Canada. This is why I'm here with all my fellow Indigenous leaders and the government of Northwest Territories to speak about a partnership not only with the Northwest Territories but with the government of Canada to support the issues of importance to the Northwest Territories, but also to the importance of issues to Canada. A strong NWT with a strong economy will support a strong Canadian economy. I'd like to thank you all. Masi cho.
For the Premier, sorry. You mentioned last year that you wanted a complete removal of the carbon tax. We just heard that it would cost $5,000. to fill up a home with gas. Do you still want the carbon tax removed, and why?
So when I was asked about the carbon tax, would I prefer that we don't have one? And yes, I would, obviously. If the higher costs were the solution to reducing greenhouse gases, the North would have been the first region in Canada to start using green technology. But the fact is that the technology isn't there right now. We don't have the ability to use things like heat pumps. And so the higher costs of the carbon tax are just higher costs. That being said, we definitely recognize the impact of increased greenhouse gases. We are on the front lines of climate change in the Northwest Territories. 2 years ago, we saw a massive a flood, which hit my community. At the time, the biggest natural disaster in the history of the territory. And just 1 year later, we are seeing extreme low waters, extreme drought, and massive forest fires. So climate change, it is real. We want to do our part, and we're continuing to do our part. Thank you.
I have another question for you. I was speaking with Nathan Obed, the president of ITK, about 2 weeks ago now, and he mentioned that Inuit are being left out of Canada's national defence strategy. That includes infrastructure that Canada is building in the North, and that if Canada wants partners there, they need to be given the resources to actually do that. What were your conversations with the Prime Minister about national defence in the North this week?
We didn't touch too much on national defence when I had my discussion with the Prime Minister, but I've met with Minister Blair and Minister Joly on a number of occasions. They have, since the defence strategy was released, Minister Blair has been very open to working with us, and Minister Joly has been open to working with us for quite some time now. So I know that they also are meeting directly with the Inuvialuit in the Northwest Territories, and so and I know there's been national defence investments up in that region as well. So I'm hopeful that they are closely collaborating with the Inuvialuit in the Northwest Territories, and I'm confident that they are, and I'm confident that President Smith would not let them not collaborate. So thank you.
And how are they collaborating with the Northwest Territories on defence?
So we've had many discussions, as I mentioned, we've had many discussions with Minister Blair. There's discussions at the officials level. Later this week, I am heading to Iqaluit with the other two northern premiers to meet with Ministers Blair and Joly and Vandal and to further discuss this strategy. Thank you.
We will now take questions on Zoom. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions en ligne. Si vous avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. Comme à l'habitude, une question et une question de suivi. As usual, one question, one follow-up. Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Just a second. We have a late raiser.
No? We got one question.
Nadir, please go ahead.
So there are different issues and priorities that all Indigenous governments work on in the North. How did you decide on which priorities to focus on in this meeting?
Merci for that question. Part of the NWT Council leaders that was formed a couple of years ago. Each leadership from across the North region and their community perspective provide their community perspectives and also priorities. And we discuss amongst ourselves what should be delivered to Ottawa as we gather here. So we have every leadership in the Northwest Territories input into our priorities. And part of that is a NWT government mandate. And we've been part of that process as well. So it has a handprint of Northwest Territories. So it is a united approach with Indigenous governments across the North, our voice of the North coming to Ottawa. Merci.
Just one follow-up, if that's okay.
Let's go ahead.
What are those priorities that are on the agenda?
There are several aspects of the priorities. Some of the areas that we talk about is the security in the Northwest Territories. Not only that, but the transportation, the corridor, and also the Mineral Act. We have so much potential in the Northwest Territories, mineral deposits. But not only that, but we also deal with health issues, challenges that we're faced with in the communities. So there are a variety of priorities that we're going to be delivering to Ottawa. We just started our discussion this morning. And so we will be addressing those with federal ministers the next few days. So, and then after that, we will be delivering key messages to whether it be press gallery or through the media. So, but like I said, this is just a beginning of our priority setting from the Northwest Territories. Merci.
Thank you. Julie Plourde, la parole est à vous.
Oui, ma question is for the Premier, Mr. Simpson. I was wondering if you feel there's an appetite in Ottawa to fund major infrastructure project like the Mackenzie Valley Highway. Do you feel that there is it would move forward? Do you feel that there's support in Ottawa for this?
Yeah, we have a number of major infrastructure projects in the territory that we are working to advance. The Mackenzie Valley Highway is one. There's the Tulsan Hydro expansion, and then there's a number of other projects as well. And the government of the Northwest Territories is the proponent on and pushing a number of these projects, and Indigenous governments have their own projects that they would like to see advanced as well. And we have seen reception in Ottawa to some of these projects. I had a good meeting with the Prime Minister about the Mackenzie Valley Highway. There was discussion about Tulsan, the expansion of our hydro system in the Northwest Territories to enhance access to green technology for residents and for industry. And there has been consistent funding over the years from Ottawa for those projects. What we would like is an approach that recognizes the North is small. We don't always have the capacity to advance these major, in some cases, billion or multi-billion-dollar projects on our own. And we would really like a solution tailored for the North so that the federal government is able to work with us as partners, because we are partners with the federal government. We always have been, same with the Indigenous governments. You know, the territory, it's covered by land claims, either settled or unsettled, and there's three partners at that table: the Indigenous governments, Canada, and the government of the Northwest Territories. And that flows into everything that we do. And so those partnerships are very important, and I'm hopeful that Ottawa will continue to be supportive, and that we will see enhanced supports in this upcoming budget. Thank you.
Avez-vous une question de suivi, Julie?
I just would like to know, I'm not sure if this is the first time that the government of the Northwest Territories is traveling to Ottawa with the Council of Leaders, but, and if it's the case, like, would you say it's a successful trip? That's my question. Yeah, you, Mr. Simpson, yes.
Thank you. So this is the first time the Council of Leaders has traveled to Ottawa. So the government of the Northwest Territories is one member of the Council of Leaders, and we have a number of Indigenous governments, Dene, Métis, and Inuit, who are also part of the Council of Leaders. Yeah, this is our first trip to Ottawa as a group, and we've had a couple meetings this morning with a couple federal ministers. And I would say it's positive. It's been good conversations. It's good to have the people from the communities, from the territory, come here and explain to the federal ministers and officials what the North is like. It's good for them to hear it directly from us. Thank you.
We will take one more question on Zoom and then one last question in the room. Nadir, please go ahead.
Sure. What are some specific agreements or maybe results the residents can expect from these meetings with the federal government? Mr. Simpson?
Sure. So thank you. So we have a number, we've developed in collaboration with the Council of Leaders, as the Grand Chief mentioned, a number of asks for the federal government that we would like to see. And so there are dollar asks related to, as I mentioned, the Tulsan Hydro project, to the federal government's approach to funding Indigenous governments related to emergency management, approaches to housing. And so there is a number of specifics that we will be discussing with the federal government. Thank you.
If I may add, as the Premier indicated, that there's been wildfires and also floods in the Northwest Territories over the last couple of years. And those are top of the discussion that we're going to be having with the federal ministers, because we are true partners as part of treaty agreement with the federal government. But those are the discussions that we need to have with the federal ministers. And like I said earlier, this is an area that we stand together from the Northwest Territories. We brought all the Indigenous leaders across the North to come to Ottawa and to be the voice of the North. So those are some of the key areas of infrastructure development that we need to seriously consider with the federal ministers. Merci.
Do you have a follow-up question?
My question is for the Grand Chief. There's a child welfare agreement with Canada that is being voted upon in the next couple of weeks with the AFN, $47.8 billion. Do you think that that should have been negotiated differently, and do you support the agreement?
Yeah, the report came out, and we believe, we see NWT were excluded for various reasons. It will be part of the discussion with Minister Hadju, I believe. And so we need to be part of the process because it is a big agenda item for us, and child welfare services in the Northwest Territories. So those are the discussions that we're going to be having with the federal minister at that time. I believe it's next day. So those are very important for Northwest Territories. So I just want to say that one of the agreements I forgot to include was that the federal ministers in Ottawa, we've concluded with direct funding on housing to Indigenous governments. It hasn't been done in the past. I think we made progress with the Ottawa government. And obviously, we'd like to see other forms of funding flow through the Indigenous governments. Not to exclude the GNWT. GNWT is also our partner. We work hand in hand as a part of NWT Council leaders. So those are some of the success stories that we're going to continue to carry with the federal ministers. But we'd like to see more of investment in the Northwest Territories. The Northwest Territories has so much to offer. So we're here for business. We're here to collaborate and work with our partner in Ottawa, federal government. Merci.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci. C'est ce qui conclut la conférence de presse.
Thank you. Good job.